Whenever we have Ketu in the first and Rahu in the seventh, again, whether this is going to be good or bad is going to depend on the dignity of the lords of Rahu and Ketu within the chart, as well as the dignity of the planets influencing Rahu and Ketu. And to do this well, as you know, I use the tropical zodiac instead of the sidereal zodiac. It will actually work out a lot better. The astrologer will be able to see this a lot easier and with more accuracy if they actually use that tropical zodiac, because the difference in the zodiacs will give different results in regards to the dignities. Now, Ketu in the first shows a person who, in past lifetimes, has done things all by themselves. They've wanted to build up their sense of self, where they knew that they could take care of anything that came their way. They probably had very good initiative, and they were in charge of their life, and they felt good about that. Now remember, Ketu is a liberating, a spiritualizing influence, and that's going to show in this lifetime the person needs to get balance, which means they need to realize that God, the divine consciousness, is not just about the personality of the individual, it's also about the other people that we interact with. And Rahu shows where in past lifetimes we've not had much success or not put a lot of attention, and so we're here to develop it in this lifetime. Whenever Ketu's in the first, Rahu's in the seventh. And that's going to show the person needs to learn how to be in relationships, how to create the capacity to relate to others, to have the give and take, to feel confident, and to develop trust in other people. And Rahu in the seventh will make a person feel insecurity and doubt in regards to partnerships, because again, they want to go at it alone. They want to do it by themselves. They don't necessarily want to rely on others. But we live in a world where there's interrelationships. And if you say that the people out there are not an aspect of you, the divine consciousness, then you don't quite understand how things work, because everything is interrelated. When we have this, Rahu in the seventh and Ketu in the first, the person can feel very paranoid sometimes, or they can feel like everyone's watching them, everyone's trying to analyze what they're doing, and this can make them feel very uncomfortable, and it can make them feel like others are trying to meddle in their affairs and so on. And all this comes about because the person has been in past lifetimes so vigilant about their personality and their internal states that they're now hypersensitive about it, and there's a sense of needing to be perfect all the time, because Ketu in the first will show that the person has done a very good job probably at perfecting who they are and their ego. But in this lifetime, that's not what it's about. It's about being there for others. Now, Ketu in the first can make a person a bit of a hermit, because again, they don't necessarily like being around other people. Although, to be honest, Ketu in the seventh can also make that happen, because they might, when you have Ketu in the seventh, that can give sort of frustrating relationships if it's not working very well. Ketu in the first, that's going to make a person really need to find out what it is they have to offer to the world, those innate skills that they have, and they're going to need to find out how can they develop that so that they can benefit the world. With Rahu in the seventh, that can make partnerships a little difficult because it's draining. The thought of maintaining relationships feels like a waste of time for them, but again, it's something that they need to develop, because when we have Rahu and Ketu in this axis, the first house, seventh house axis, it shows that the person's needing to find balance within that area of their life, within themselves and others. So whatever axis Rahu and Ketu is on, whether it's the first and the seventh, which is self to others, or whether it's the fourth and the 10th, which is balancing one's emotional environment and home with one's responsibilities and work in the world, wherever that axis falls, it's going to show where the person is aiming to develop more balance in this lifetime so that they can move on with their path karmically. Now, Rahu in the seventh can give a person relationships with foreigners, or give maybe a strange partner. Since Rahu works like Saturn, if a person is Caucasian, it can give them a darker-skinned partner, because Rahu can darken that area of a person's life. It can show a person who meets their partner in foreign countries, because Rahu represents foreigners. Rahu in the seventh house, since the seventh house is a house of business, it can also show a person who deals a lot with foreign cultures, or who maybe travels for work. These are all just some things that we can consider. Of course, there are other aspects of the chart that we have to look at to confirm this, But overall, Rahu in the 7th, it can give success in relationships as long as the dignities of the lords are good, as we keep mentioning. But there are other things we need to understand about relationships, such as where is the lord of the 7th house? What else is influencing the 7th house? What is influencing the 7th lord? And so if anyone tells you that you have Rahu or Ketu in the 7th house, and therefore you're not going to be able to get married or you're not going to be able to relate to people, that's not true. I know a number of people who have these positions, and some of them got married very early, and they've been married their entire life. They didn't even get any divorce. They might have had some rocky ups and downs because Rahu and Ketu is going to give them this need to figure out how can they make it work. But it can work, and I've seen it both ways. With Ketu in the 7th, with Rahu in the 7th, it doesn't matter. If the person has some wisdom and some detachment and some good planets influencing Rahu and Ketu, relationships can work out in the end. We also have to remember that there are other Vargas, other divisional charts that we need to assess. The 7th house deals with our sexual relationships, our children, our creative relationships, those relationships where we engage in some sort of creativity or procreation. There's a 9th house in the 9th divisional chart, which represents our marriage and our path and how we relate to that path. And if you have some weakness within the birth chart in regards to relationship, but you've got strength within the Navamsha, that can give some initial difficulties, but if the Navamsha is strong, you can work through those difficulties. So we need to look at the birth chart as the path, like the tree, and we need to look at the Vargas, the divisional charts, as though these are the fruits of that tree. And sometimes you get people who are in a relationship, they get married, they have things working out, but they're in a bit of a miserable relationship. And that would be an example of having a really beautiful Rashi chart, horoscope, main birth chart, where you get what you need, but maybe not necessarily having such a great Saptamsha or such a great Navamsha, and that shows that the fruit of that tree isn't so sweet. I just mention all this because there's a number of factors involved in regards to relationships and relationship compatibility and self-development. One of the best things you can do is, if you're concerned about relationships for yourself, you need to find an astrologer to correctly assess your chart, a good astrologer. You need to be self-honest with who you are and what you're about. And when I do relationship compatibilities, personally, what I do is I like to look at the individual charts and just describe to the two participants, this is the chart that you're looking at. This is the karma that each of you are bringing to the situation. Can you both handle that? Are you willing to do it? Are you willing to accept this? And that's what we really should do if we're trying to build a meaningful relationship. Not just find that person or thing which is going to gratify our senses or gratify our sense of self and make us feel wonderful all the time, because that's just not going to happen. Marriage and partnership is actually about building something together. And no matter whatever you're building, there's going to be ups and downs. And you need to find out, is it worth it for you to do it with this person? When you look at their karma, when you look at their baggage, when you look at what they've got, are you willing to take that on? Are you willing to work through that? Because when you get married, your karma in a sense merges and joins, and you have to work through it together. So when it comes to relationship compatibility, it's good to get an assessment of that. Find an astrologer who can do it. Or if that's too expensive, because that is an expensive undertaking, there's a lot of research involved in that, not to mention the session. Go to astralvedicastrology.com, which is my website. Go to the astrological services page, and down on that page, underneath of the compatibility reading information, you'll see a link to some basic compatibility reports that are very affordable and they're very accurate. They can give you a sense of what is your capacity to get married, what is your capacity to be in a relationship. And if you've got a partner, you can put in their birth information too, and it will also tell you what is their capacity to be in a relationship. Once you do that, then you have to work it out on your own. But don't just listen to astrologers who say you've got Rahu in the 7th house or Ketu in the 7th house, and therefore you're not going to get in good relationships, because that's just not true. There's a number of things you have to assess, a number of things that you have to look at. And one of those things you have to look at might be, is your path even to be in relationship, or is your path even to have relationship an important part of your life? Because we all have different paths, and some of them include relationships and some of them don't. And that's where Vedic astrology is very helpful, because it helps us to be self-honest with our capacity in that regard. And then, of course, if you do find that it is your path and there is potential for a relationship, the astrologer also needs to look at timing, the dashas, the transits. Because sometimes we may have the potential, but the season doesn't occur on our timetable. It occurs later on, or occurs earlier. whatever it might be within the Vedic chart, we can see where are those relationship karmas, how easy are they to manifest, and when are they going to manifest.